Do you ever feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders? Like every little problem is a giant mountain and every setback feels like a personal attack? We've all been there. It's so easy to get caught up in the negativity, to let our troubles define our days. But what if I told you there's a simple yet profound secret to changing that perspective? A way to find peace and even joy, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing your heart. Today, I want to share a beautiful story with you, a story about a young man struggling with life's bitterness, and a wise elder who shows him the path to inner peace. This isn't just a tale, it's a lesson that could transform the way you see everything. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and stay with me until the end, because the wisdom in this story holds the key to a lighter, more fulfilling life. There once was a young man who was deeply unhappy. He felt that life had been unfair to him. Every day was a struggle, filled with disappointment and frustration. He complained constantly to anyone who would listen, about his job, his relationships, his finances. He felt like a victim of circumstance, trapped in a cycle of bitterness. One day, overwhelmed by his own negativity, he heard about a wise old master who lived in a monastery on a nearby mountain. People said this master had a special kind of wisdom, a way of seeing the world that brought peace to troubled souls. Desperate for a solution, the young man decided to make the journey to seek his advice. After a long and arduous climb, he finally reached the monastery. He found the master sitting peacefully in a garden, tending to his plants. The old man had a serene smile and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. The young man bowed respectfully and began to pour out all his troubles. He spoke for what felt like hours, listing every single thing that made him miserable, every injustice he felt he had suffered. He complained about his boss, his noisy neighbors, the bad weather, and the never-ending stream of small annoyances that seemed to follow him everywhere. "Master," he said, his voice filled with despair, "why is my life so full of bitterness? Why must I suffer so much?" The master listened patiently without interrupting. When the young man finally finished, the master simply smiled and asked him to fetch a glass of water and a handful of salt. Confused but obedient, the young man did as he was told. The master then instructed him, "Put the handful of salt into the glass of water and stir it well." The young man did so. "Now," said the master, "drink it." The young man took a small sip and immediately grimaced, spitting it out. "It's awful. It's so salty and bitter," he exclaimed. The master chuckled softly. "Indeed," he said. "The salt represents the suffering and problems in your life. In this small glass, the salt makes the water undrinkable, doesn't it?" The young man nodded, still confused about the point of this strange exercise. "Now follow me," the master said, gesturing for the young man to pick up the same handful of salt and follow him out of the garden. They walked in silence for a few minutes until they arrived at a large, pristine lake, its surface shimmering under the morning sun. The water was crystal clear, and the surrounding mountains were reflected perfectly on its still surface. It was a picture of perfect tranquility. "Now," the master said, his voice calm and steady, "throw this handful of salt into the lake." The young man tossed the salt into the vast body of water. The crystals disappeared instantly, causing only the faintest of ripples. "And now," the master instructed, "take a sip of water from the lake." The young man cupped his hands, scooped up some water and drank. It was fresh, cool, and pure. "How does it taste?" asked the master. "It's wonderful," the young man replied. "It's refreshing. I can't taste any salt at all." The master sat down on a rock by the shore and motioned for the young man to join him. "My son," he began, "the pain and problems of life are like that handful of salt. They are inevitable. The amount of salt, the amount of suffering remains the same. But the bitterness we taste depends entirely on the container we put it in." He paused, letting his words sink in. "When your heart is small, like that glass of water, even a small amount of suffering makes your whole life bitter. You become consumed by it. Every problem feels overwhelming and you can't taste anything but the salt. But," He continued, gesturing towards the vast lake. When you learn to expand your heart, to make it as wide and deep as this lake, the same amount of suffering dissolves. The salt is still there, but it no longer has the power to poison your entire existence. The problems are still present, but they don't overwhelm you. You can still taste the sweetness and freshness of life. The young man stared at the lake, a profound realization dawning on him. For the first time, he understood. It wasn't about getting rid of the salt. It was about becoming the lake. His whole life, he had been trying to fight the salt, to deny it, to complain about it. He had kept his heart small, closed off, and as a result, his entire life tasted bitter. "So, master?" the young man asked, his voice filled with a newfound sense of hope. "How do I expand my heart? How do I become the lake?" The master smiled warmly. "You do it by shifting your focus," he explained. "Instead of focusing on the salt, you focus on the water. You cultivate gratitude. Every day, find things to be thankful for, no matter how small. Be thankful for the sun that warms your face, the air you breathe, the food you eat, the kindness of a stranger." He continued, "You also do it through compassion and service. When you stop focusing on your own suffering and start helping others with theirs, your own problems naturally seem smaller. When you give, when you love, when you connect with the world around you, your heart expands. It becomes a vast lake, capable of holding all of life's experiences, the joy and the sorrow, without being overcome by bitterness." The young man sat in silence for a long time, contemplating the master's words. He looked at the vast, peaceful lake, and then back at his own hands. He realized he held the power not to change his problems, but to change his capacity to hold them. He didn't need a life without salt. He needed a heart like a lake. From that day forward, the young man's life began to change. He didn't magically get a new job or perfect relationships. The salt was still there. But he started practicing gratitude. Every morning he would think of 3 things he was thankful for. He started volunteering at a local shelter, focusing on the needs of others. He learned to appreciate the small moments of beauty in his day. Slowly but surely, his heart began to expand. The bitterness faded, replaced by a sense of peace and a quiet joy he had never known before. He had become the lake. This story is such a powerful reminder for all of us. How often do we let a single problem, a single handful of salt, poison our entire day, our entire week, or even our entire life? We focus so intensely on what's wrong that we forget to see all that is right. We keep our hearts in a small glass, and then wonder why life tastes so bitter. The secret to a happier life isn't a life without problems. It's developing a heart that is big enough to hold those problems without losing its sweetness. It's about cultivating a mindset of gratitude and an attitude of service. When you focus on what you're thankful for, you're adding fresh water to your lake. When you help someone else, you're making your lake wider and deeper. So I want to challenge you today. Think about your own life. Are you living in a glass or a lake? The next time you feel overwhelmed by a problem, I want you to remember this story. Acknowledge the salt, yes, but then intentionally shift your focus. Ask yourself, what can I be grateful for right now? Or, who can I help today? Expand your container. Don't let the bitterness of one handful of salt define the taste of your entire life. You have the power to become the lake. It's a practice, a daily choice. But it is the most transformative choice you can make for your own peace and happiness. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope this story brought you a little bit of peace and a new perspective. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories and insights to help you live a more conscious and joyful life. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What's one thing you're grateful for today? Let's start expanding our hearts together. Until next time, take care and be well.